Lately, all anybody wants to talk about is recession, recession, recession. So, since we all seem to collectively feel we are on the brink of financial collapse, can we make living within our means sexy again? Half of the agents that I know are living to post every shoe, car, and bag that they own to the gram for clout. Listen, what's the point of owning a Lexus if you can't even pay your Macy's bill? Agents have a couple of good years and now they're selling courses and posting motivational speeches to their feed like they're auditioning to be America's next top cult leader. Now, some of that I understand, right? If your mindset's not right, it's not if, but when you're going to fail in the real estate industry. But recession or not, 2023 is going to be a real wake-up call for agents faking the funk for the gram.
I just wanna clap, clap, turn around, just wanna clap, turn around.
What is your official title? Because I know
I'm Director of Sales.
Yes. So Ryan is, we're both at the same brokerage. This is Ryan Langley, Florida Realty Investments Director of Sales, but I feel like you do so many things. So I like to bother Ryan whenever I need a second opinion or I have a question about something. I mean, I've been doing it for 20 years, but I don't know everything. So I call this guy and I bug him and I make him talk to me.
I've been in the business 24 years. Been licensed for 24 years. I did commercial.
So you got your license when you were 10.
Yeah. You're a baby. My elementary school, you can major in it and get your,
me too.
Was in commercial for 15 years. And I still am. I still do it's part of the reason I have this gig is because I still do my outside development and commercial deals, which is wonderful.
Right.
I manage agents. When I started 8 years and 8.25 years ago, we had 150 agents and now we have 975 agents.
Wow.
That I manage. One of the things I do in my role is I play psychologist, and I can tell you, you are the most active in that department. You are the most, I calm you down. You're the one who calls for the most, like, I think I know what to do. I'm just stressed out about this and that. And so you're the best. So
yeah, you got to throw that last part in there. Say that a couple more times. Yeah.
All the other stuff he says is exactly right.
Exactly.
Of course, you do the perfect amount of making sure things are right before you do them, but you don't get so caught up that some people get so caught up that they get so caught up on the details. So you have to have the salesperson mentality, the putting the deal. When I say salesperson, I don't mean forcing sales down people.
Sure,
I mean,
right.
I mean putting deals together and getting the buyer and the seller what they want.
Yeah.
At the same time, being thorough with your paperwork.
Right.
And that's a tough combination. You get people so interested in just the crossing the T's and dotting the I's that they don't get the deal done, and they'll create a mountain out of a molehill and not get the deal done. And then of course you have other people who put the deal together and they have no regard for the paperwork. Yeah. So in between there, I'm the bridge in between those two mindsets. Yeah. And so that's a lot of what I do. I love what I do. It's fantastic. It's on one hand, I don't kill myself with my work. It's not to me, it's not too stressful.
Okay, so I'm gonna try to squeeze a crazy story. Do you have any crazy stories for me, like couples, or is there anything or is that like you can't share?
I wouldn't share most of them, but I specific.
Are there any tips that you would give somebody, like maybe about that? Like, if somebody is like, what's your thoughts on that? If somebody's not married, they're buying you're saying call Nashad.
They can do, find out the best way to do it, but you're pretty. Again, I'm not an attorney, so
of course,
but you're pretty safe and just common ownership as long as it's spelled out beforehand. It's going to be 50-50. Yeah. If you are the one paying all the bills due to whatever, you're the only one that could go on the mortgage, it gets really sticky. And that's where you definitely need to talk to an attorney. And yes, I have heard those stories. And I've heard, what I've heard a lot of lately is divorces. Yeah. And they both want to sell, but there's so much going on between them. They might get back together. One wants to sell, one doesn't want to sell. Yeah. They sign a listing agreement, they get a contract, then they're going to get back together and keep the house, or they've decided to let the husband or the wife live in the house, stay in the house. It is messy. It is messy. Yeah. And that's almost more advice for agents dealing with that kind of thing. Yeah. Or, and so then one of them agrees to a certain sale price and the other one doesn't because, completely irrelevant stuff like, well, my bills are this much. I need this much money out of the house. Well, the house is only worth what it's worth. You owe this much on it. You're going to get this much equity out of it. Yeah. And you got to split it. So, but we can't just sell your house for $50,000 more so you get more money. Your bills are irrelevant to what the house is worth and what it sells for. Right. So I think that agents could do a better job explaining all that up front, but I see a lot of back end of this stuff and a lot of deals try to cancel. And I really think that maybe agents don't explain it well enough. certainly consumers don't understand well enough is when I sign a contract, especially as a seller, I can be made to perform.
Specific performance.
Specific performance. And if
Again,
I
not an
don't,
attorney, not an attorney.
and
but
on the other end of
buzzwords.
that, everything I say is I'm not an attorney, but, and then they say everything you say
me
before
too,
the
I
but
know.
doesn't count. So I'm not an attorney, period. Next sentence.
I'm the same way. I know. I'm like, listen, this is not legal advice. That's the number one thing I know.
Right.
Because people will want us to be really definitive. And I'm like, listen, at the end of the day, it's a personal choice. And if you need legal counsel, call in a shot.
Right. People sign contracts and this is a big deal. You know, it's less of a big deal for a buyer, really. They can be sued for breach, you know, and some damages or whatever, but there has to be real damages there. But the seller can be sued to perform. And especially if it, and I'm not
sent somebody a letter like that. I heard, you know, I knew one of the parties involved, and Nishad sent one of those. I was advised, I was told that he sent one of those letters saying, hey, guess what? I know you don't want to sell anymore, but you're gonna.
Well,
and they did.
And they have to, but like anything else, it can be settled. But you're going to end up paying for the inspection, the appraisal, all the money that the buyer's out. If the buyer has sold their house, now there's a whole another slew of damages, and at some point you just sell the house.
Right.
So it doesn't, you can't just, this is a legal binding contract.
Yeah.
You know, they make it, and I tell our agents this all the time, they make it, you know, the forms that we use as realtors are designed by the Florida Association, they're called FARBAR, Florida Association of Realtors, and the Florida Bar, put them together. And they put them together to where we can fill them out, right? Without our law degrees, we can fill in the blanks.
Right.
And fill them out as realtors, right?
Yeah.
Licensed realtors can fill them out, or licensed realtors can fill them out, yes. So they might seem simplistic because there are only, you know, 20 blanks on there that need to be filled out.
Yeah.
But they're legally binding contracts. They're serious contracts. They're for big money. And for most people, it's the biggest financial decision they make in their life.
Sure.
Their next house. Because they'll buy a house, a starter house, that's their biggest thing they've ever bought. Their next house, that's the biggest one. All the way up to their final, when they finally downsize when they're elderly, it's the last house they ever buy. So it's the most important one, right?
Yeah.
And they're putting in, when they sell their last house, that's the most money they're going to put in their pocket and try to live on the rest of their lives.
Yeah.
And so it can be, they're very serious. And people will sign as a seller, and, you know, the buyer, you're kind of limited by your deposit, but the sellers, you're selling your house. You better find somewhere to live.
Yeah.
A lot of times, especially back when the market was crazy, seller's market, they couldn't find anything for months or whatever. Of course, you know, if you have a realtor to negotiate those things, then they can, how many post-occupancies did we see? You know, almost every deal. Almost every deal had a post-occupancy.
Yeah, because there was nothing, right? Like now it's a little bit better. They have more options. But like you said, I mean, they might be, you know, sell their house, and it's like, where are they going to go? You're going to go live in the Motel 6 if you don't.
And this is a whole other thing. I thought I had nothing to say about this, but I could go on forever.
Okay.
So the post-occupancy is another thing.
Yeah.
Talk to an attorney. We can't draw up your post-occupancy. Don't use a regular lease. Don't do any of that stuff.
Yeah.
If I buy your house and I let you live there.
And a real estate attorney. I had one where I referred somebody, and I'm sure I called you a couple times on this one, and no identifying details, but that was they hired an attorney who did not specify in real estate.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I heard there were some things that were missed, and I'm like, call somebody that is real estate specific, you know? And even like I have a good friend that's a divorce attorney, and she's like, you know, she would refer you out if it's not their specialty.
I see that a lot because people have a brother-in-law or a cousin or somebody who's a realtor, was a lawyer, and they're going to get free or almost free service, so they use them. Well, it's not even the money. Yeah, I guess, but you got to have somebody that specializes in that. It's just like commercial real estate. Everybody specifies, everybody has a niche.
Yeah.
In attorneys. Yeah, you see that a lot. So you need a realtor to negotiate a to get you post-occupancy, and then you need to see an attorney to get you there. Because if I try to draw something up with you, even if I use a FARBAR lease, which is a basic lease designed for long-term lease, use a FARBAR lease, it's not, first of all, it's not legal to do it for less than 7 months. And so it needs to be part of a contract. There's a different way to do this, and I'll let an attorney explain it, as a matter of fact. But it needs to be done, because if I let you live in it, if I buy your house and I let you live in it afterward, and something happens, or you leave it a mess, or you won't leave because you can't find, well, I told you I'd find something in 45, 60 days and I haven't found anything yet. Well, tough. I still need you out of there, but it's got to be enforceable.
Right.
An attorney will make sure it's enforceable.
Right.
Because if I got to go through a whole eviction process and all that stuff, I mean, it's expensive and ugly, and you're not going to leave the house in good shape, et cetera.
This episode is brought to you by First International Title. At First International Title, they understand buying or selling a property can be hectic. Their team is committed to making the process as seamless as possible. And as Florida's largest independent agent, First International Title invests in the best technology and training to make the process secure and highly efficient for everyone. They're my go-to for title companies in the area. You can visit firstentitle.com to learn more and contact Chris Atwell at chris.atwell@firstentitle.com for exclusive offers from Selling Funny. As the director of sales, you and I, I'm sure I've had this conversation. Like, we try to give options, try to be a resource. We're not like, you have to work with this guy. Because I've heard stories of that where I was told that I had to work with this lender. I actually, and I'm not going to name the builder, but I actually went into a new home center in like late, or maybe it was actually even early 2021. And the sales rep said, you have to work with our lender. And I'm like, well, no, they don't have to work with your lender.
We've had this a couple of times, and I tell, what's the rule of inspectors? You probably know the rule of inspectors, but when your client asks for inspectors, do you know anybody? You give them at least 3 and tell them they can Google anybody else they want. So for our agents, for example, we have a vendor list of people that our people have worked with before.
Yeah.
Here's your inspector. We have 5 inspectors on there.
Sure.
Give them all of those and give them and tell them they can Google anybody else they want to. These are ones we worked with before and they've done great.
Yeah.
Google anybody you want. Because we've had people before who have said, oh, use XYZ inspection company.
Right.
Then there's a problem after the inspection and everybody's in trouble.
Right.
Right. So, because it looks like you've funneled them, especially if it's a relative or a best friend or something like that, you can look like it was all a big setup, and that people were purposefully non-disclosing facts, material facts.
It's just so not like we were talking about a TikTok scenario where a buyer purchased and they were like, I used that exact scenario. I used the inspector my realtor picked, and that's the mistake that I made.
Right.
And the inspector noted on her inspection report, the issues that she was complaining about, the pests and the roaches and rats. But she said that the paper says one thing, but I was told, don't worry about it, it's Florida. But of course it was like an actual infestation. And then so she blamed the realtor because, anyway, that happens. You don't want to do that.
Right. So
options.
This particular case was mold under the, not mold, it was previous water intrusion that had caused wood damage underneath a sink in the bathroom and blah, blah, blah. Right. So, so this whole thing was a mess.
Right.
And the agent had them use his inspection company that he works with all the time. And it wasn't a relative or anything, but it was, he only gave them one name and had them do that.
Yeah.
And it was a mess. And I tell you got to give them 3 lenders, not as much. I mean, lenders typically comes down to, they're going to give you roughly the same rate. It comes down to service. And so you can give them a couple of lenders if you want to, but typically there's not going to be a big blowback on lenders.
Yeah.
Builder lenders, typically they give you, $15,000 credit or something like that if you're going to use their in-house lender.
Right.
Of course, there's a reason they do that.
Right.
But inspectors, just right down to everything, not so much title companies are by the book. Most of them are lowest promulgated rate, all that stuff.
Yeah.
So it's all a matter of service. And hopefully, when I talk about putting your team together with agents, your agent should be getting some kind of benefit from their team, some kind of special service. If you have a good agent who does business like you do, you have people who will drop other files to help yours.
Right. Quicker response times.
Because you're their because you're their moneymaker. Right. So they're going to take better care of your clients and they take care of other people. And if you have those kind of relationships, you can exploit that and help your clients.
And that's kind of the whole thing, I'm trying to achieve with the podcast, right? Is that I feel like everybody thinks real estate is just about numbers or houses. And I feel like it's really involves that, but it's really about relationships between people, whether it's relationships, my business is all referral based. We've been both in the business 2 decades, and that's what keeps my business running is people are happy with my service. They refer me out. And then in turn, I have relationships with all of those vendors that people might need, so that when they need somebody, I'm going to probably be able to get them maybe a more competitive rate or just give them some more options.
There's so many things and that realtors do for the client that I don't think that the consumer understands.
Yeah, it's not like, oh, I found the house myself. Well, that's like the smallest part, right?
Right. Right. Well, absolutely. So, well, not only that, if you talk about buyers, it's a no-brainer. We talk about buyers because
Right.
buyers, the seller's paying for it. Do you want to be represented or do you not?
Right.
So I give this scenario a lot. As realtors, we have a code of ethics, but they're also humans, right? So if you're a buyer, let's say that Susie Realtor has a listing.
Yeah.
And you're a buyer and you drive by and you see the sign and you call Susie, or you go to the open house and you meet Susie with no representation, right? And you go in and you do, I don't know how many people understand this as consumers, how this works, but Susie's going to get 5 or 6%. I'm sorry, the seller's paying 5 or 6%. Susie's going to get either half of that or all of it.
Right.
If you go right to her, she loves you because she's going to get all of it. Okay.
Right.
And when you do that, Susie really wants the seller to accept your offer. Susie really wants this thing to close because she's going to get 6% instead of 3% or 5 instead of 2.5, whatever it is. Let's say you do your inspection and there's a little problem with the roof, right? Mm-hmm. Maybe there's something wrong here. Maybe there's something wrong there. Mm-hmm. When I have Christina representing me, Christina's going to say, let's go get an estimate. Let's do this. Let's do that. Let's present it to them. Let's ask for either a concession or ask them to repair it by a licensed roofer and pass our inspection, right?
Yeah.
If Susie Realtor is the listing agent and she is representing both sides or is what we call a transaction brokerage relationship, she's going to gloss that over. She knows what the seller will do and won't do for that. And she'll say, that's probably a $1,000 problem. Let me see what the sellers will do.
I think an important difference there too is people are conflating realtor and real estate agent. And when you're a realtor like us, you have a code of ethics. It's very much different than, if you're just going to the seller, they're not held to the same standard. If you're just going to a real estate agent, you're not held to the same standard as somebody that's a member of the National Association of Realtors.
Yeah. There's some funny episodes on Modern Family.
Are they? Oh, I know.
Phil, the difference between a realtor and real estate agent.
God bless him.
But yeah, so yes, but even with the code of ethics, it doesn't cover every little thing like that. And not everybody follows the code of ethics. People who it's true. And you've talked to sellers about this before, and think about this from a code of ethics standpoint. You've talked to your sellers before and they want to pay 4%. And you say, if you do that, I've got to offer 2% to another agent. They're not going to show the home as much as if I offer 3%. Well, why not? Aren't they supposed to do the best thing for their client? Shouldn't they show them all the homes? No, they're human.
My philosophy.
Right. It's your philosophy because you're an ethical realtor, but not everybody is. And they see that as, why would I work for 50% less, really? Instead of 3%, I'm going to make 2%. Yeah. You know what I mean? So why am I going to show the home? Or they'll show the home, but then they'll push the other homes on their client. So it's, they're not everybody, there's a code of ethics, but it doesn't spell out every little thing.
Yeah. I mean, there's bad apples in every
For sure. And it's not just bad,
right?
It's not just bad apples. I don't want to get any further into that, but buyers, it's a no-brainer for buyers to get representation because they're not paying for it. The seller's paying for it. They're paying the same amount. Typically, whether you're represented or not, get represented. Get somebody on your side.
It's a good point, especially I think for new homes, and that I sold new homes. That was the first real estate job that I had. I have a lot of friends that are new home sales reps, but those are people that represent the builder specifically. Right. So they're going to be there to give you your options at that particular site, neighborhood, or builder, right? Whereas me or you, we're going to be like, hey, here's all of your options. You didn't even know about this thing over here. Nishad and I were talking about, I referred him a realtor that sold a unit in a condo with an HOA that's filled with mold, and the HOA has refused to do anything. He hasn't been able to live in it for like years. So we know about those things that are going on, so we can tell you, hey, I'm aware of this situation in this neighborhood, or whatever the case may be. There's just stuff that like the website doesn't know about. I think I was talking to, Cliff Long back in the day. We were talking about something and like, the websites don't know which house is the cat pee house. You know what I mean? Like right. I have and that became more popular during the pandemic. People were buying just from video tours. And I had some friends that had moved. I have some friends that they're, he's a Microsoft engineer. He moved up to Bellevue, and then the pandemic hit, and they're like, we're able to work remotely. We want to come back down. And they did. And so I was video touring, and, one house that I saw, it was beautiful. And they're like, that's really nice. And I'm like, it reeks of cigarette smoke. Like that, they had a smoker in the house, and that was just what he did. He smoked all day. He was retired, smoked all day in his house. And it's like, that's not going to be super easy to get out, The website can't tell you that kind of stuff. One thing that I think is really important that I'm seeing a lot is like, I've just heard stories where people are not, they're extending, when you extend the closing date, you've got to also extend finance state. You know what I mean? Because we're talking about escrow disputes. And so what do you think, like, okay, so 2023, and I know I was talking about it in hot takes earlier where it's a different landscape. I think in some ways it's better. There's not necessarily going to be 40 competing offers when you're trying to buy a house, but everybody is kind of watching, Silicon Valley Bank and, Credit Suisse and all of these things that are happening in the world. And people are, a lot of recession talk going around, all the inflation. If you're buying or selling real estate in 2023, like what's your, even just as a homeowner, like what are your thoughts on what are some things that people should do?
I think that interest rates are, I don't think they're coming down to me. I don't know for sure.
Yeah.
Nobody knows for sure. But
Right.
Obviously the Fed's going up a quarter point now, and I don't think inflation is getting under control. And I think that that's a problem.
Right.
And I think that they are doing some more quantitative easing right now, which is printing money. So it's not going to get that under control anytime soon. There's still people getting free money, and it's not going to get under control anytime soon. But I think that people are still, we're down to 3 in Orlando, 2.5 in Tampa.
Yeah.
People are still buying.
Yeah.
We're seeing 8 offers, 12 offers still, not 45, but 8 or
Right.
12 and 6 and 4. And it is, there are buyers out there still. It's a good time to buy, I think, but more, people's life decisions, they still buy them because their
Yeah.
life decisions,
Right. It's a
affect
personal
that.
choice.
Well, they're going to move, they're getting married, they're having kids, they're living their
Right.
life. And not to sound callous, but a few bucks here and there aren't going to make or break them.
Sure.
And I don't think that home prices have not gone down.
Right.
And I don't think we have manufactured demand in Florida, just because we always have in Florida. 1,000 more
Right.
people move in here a day than move out.
Yeah.
It's just, it's growing all the
Right.
time.
Yeah.
So every 3 years we go up 1 million people. It's crazy. Michigan is seeing decline now.
Yeah.
New York is seeing decline, and their housing prices go with that.
Yeah.
And our demand is still high. People, how many clients do you have that are moving into the area?
Yeah. Yeah. There's still demand.
And there's still cash too.
Yeah. I'm seeing buyers get there. I think it's a better landscape in a lot of ways. If the rate is not to your liking, which everybody would prefer 3% to 6% or 7%, but 6% or 7% still isn't the end of the world. You can buy down your rate. You can get the seller to buy down your rate. You can usually get concessions. I just did a deal where we got almost 3% in closing costs. We got a bunch of repairs and we got a new roof. So, and it's a brand new, totally remodeled house. Beautiful. So, and there were other people sniffing around, but we got the offer in on time and she didn't have to get into a bidding war or anything. So I think in some ways it's almost better than last year, because, and everybody's so sick of this. I'm sick of the saying, marry the house, date the rate, but it's true. You can always refinance. And, there's even a builder or a lender rather, that I worked with that I think they just got acquired by a new company. But what they were doing is something I've heard of people doing where they're like, listen, you're buying this house now. We're going to commit right now that we're going to pay your closing costs when you refinance, if you refinance in the next 3 years. If the rate goes down in 3 years, we're going to cover your closing costs and then you can refinance the house. So there's options.
And then I want to get back on today's market just briefly,
Yeah,
because
please.
what I was going to talk about before.
Yeah.
So you're seeing 6 or 8 offers on houses, but they're not crazy like they were before. They're
Right.
very similar offers. They're at asking price,
Right.
and they're asking for a little bit back. So to buy down a rate or to do whatever.
Yeah.
Right. The 325 and under houses are ridiculous. People are going like crazy.
Right.
Interest rates are
That's
not
like our median.
now it's almost like starter homes, right?
Yeah,
in the
that's
200s, which my first house in Orlando was $60,000.
Mine was 112. And I know Lawrence Young
You're a
our
lot younger
economist.
than I am.
Yeah, significantly. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not. But yeah, I know Lawrence Young, our chief economist for the National Association of Realtors, was coming out. He did a podcast and with Brian Buffini, well-known real estate coach, and he was saying, hey, we're expected to be flat, maybe 1% growth this year, 5% or 4% growth in 2024, and also that the average salary needed to be purchasing a home these days is about $80K. Like just to get into some of these starter homes.
That's not what the bank will tell you. A lender's going to tell you can when you have $80,000 a year, you can buy $700,000 house or something crazy. I'm exaggerating, but they'll put you in 500, 450, 500, which is probably not where you need to be.
Get that good faith estimate and find out what your payments are going to be. Look at the taxes.
One of our agents had a buyer. This buyer went to buy this house. They were perfectly happy. They were more than happy with the price they got it for and everything else. Well, after their inspection period, there were solar panels up on the roof. They've been led to believe that they were paid for, that there, right? This is an elderly seller, been led to believe that they were there. And they found out after the inspection period, they found out that she owes $60,000 on the lease. They're leased, and it's $60,000 on this lease. So I had an agent who was going to send in a thing saying, extend the closing, but not the inspection period. And so we extended their inspection period as well. They're trying to negotiate the lease, trying to get out the lease, et cetera.
Sure.
So this elderly lady, her kids are involved, and said, well, mom got taken. They never hooked up the solar panels. They're not doing her any good. But I think that they took advantage of her. And I'm not saying solar panels are a bad thing all the time.
Oh, I know. But people
that's
need
a whole
to know.
nother podcast if you want to talk about that. But
let me tell you, the solar guys, they come, they knock on my door, they call me every day, but it's not the type of thing. I love I love the effect for the environment. Great. But it's not the type of thing where you pay $40K for solar panels and then you automatically add $40K to the value of your home. Because like you said, I mean, it becomes, if it's not paid off, you got to apply for it. You got to apply for a second loan while you're applying for the loan for the house. And they say, don't take out any more lines of credit. By the way, it still has a loan on the solar. So you've got to apply to qualify for the solar.
There's all kinds of things. So I'm a very analytical person.
Yeah.
And so I look at the break-even point on something like
Sure.
that. And you do not want to sell your house before you break even on those solar panels. I would rather have a house with solar panels.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
For the same dollar, right? Because I'm going to save on my electric bill. And if I want to pat myself on the back or whatever, I can do that, feel good about it too. But if the average time someone lives in a house is 5 to 7 years. The average person buys and sells in 5 to 7 years. Mm-hmm. They're never going to pay for themselves in 5 to 7 years. So it's typically going to be 12 years that they take, 10 to 12 years to pay for themselves. And they do pay for themselves. And it's great. Solar, it's great. And it's great if you can really get the Ferrari of it and get the Tesla batteries in your garage and all that stuff. In Florida, it's great for hurricanes. When power goes out, you've got the backup batteries and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Your house runs like perfect.
Yeah.
But it's not otherwise. Otherwise, you're going to have a headache when you go to sell it. They're not going to appraise. They don't appraise for nearly their value. And
the solar bros right now are so mad. They're watching this. They're so mad.
I know. And I'm very sorry. I think they're great. I think the product's great.
And I agree.
And if I were going to live in my house for that long.
But they will tell you like, oh, there's no problems. There's everything you're saying that people need to think about that. You touched on one thing I wanted to talk about before we wrap up is, people not necessarily budgeting and living according. I know this is more like agent centric, but if agents are as far as agents go, I see all these agents and, they're posting it up, man. They're living the life. They're popping bottles. They are, leasing luxury cars and just really doing it for the gram. What do you think agents need to do differently in 2023 versus 2022? If you're an agent or if you're thinking of getting into the industry and being an agent.
We're 100% brokerage. And what I teach our agents is to spend the money that we don't take, that your broker's taking, the 30% or 20% or whatever it is, and spend that on your business. You've heard me say that a million times. So spend it on your business. And the way Christina spends on her business is not the same way that Al's going to spend on his business. Al's 82 years old. Gosh, I hope I've got that right. And he's not listening to a podcast regardless, but he's 82 years old and lives in DeLand.
He's in better.
He's not going to spend his money like you do, or like a 25-year-old kid who lives in agent who lives in downtown Orlando.
On the
and
TikTok.
Yes, I'm old enough to say kid for 25. So how he spends his money is different how they spend their money. And so that freedom allows you to spend your money however you want, rather than saying, give me 30% and I'll give you a nice little office here, a nice little cubicle, and I'll give you 900 door hangers every time you have a sale. I was reading a FSBO article, and that's what got me off on some of this things that people need to do, the reason you should hire a realtor and all this stuff, besides all the obvious legal pitfalls and all that kind of stuff, but just knowing how to fix up your house. No, I don't want to get into that. That's a whole nother podcast too. They don't, the consumer, and there's consumers listening to this, they don't want to see you necessarily pull up in a Mercedes. They're not impressed that you're popping bottles downtown at 2:37 a.m., right? They're not impressed by that stuff. They don't want to think of their agent like that.
Yeah.
They don't want to think, they're irritated enough that they're paying commission. They do need to, because they need representation. They need to know what they're doing, because they don't know what they're doing.
It's worth it. Yeah.
I don't think they want to see you pull up in a G-Wagon. They want to see a regular person, a regular hardworking person. And in reality, by the time that they think they're paying 5 or 6%, but then by the time this agent splits it with their broker, or they're on a team, God forbid, they're splitting it with 5 people, and then they're splitting it with their broker, and they're only getting one side, or they think they're paying Christina 6%, but really she's getting half, and then she's splitting it with her broker, and then they're, you know, and her team and her
then
this and her
everybody's
that.
favorite, the government gets involved.
And the government, yes, and that's not getting any better anytime soon either. Yeah, forget about that. The taxes too.
I could never forget. As long as I live, I will never, ever, could never forget. Never.
No, I mean,
I will never forget.
In addition, there's the government. So
hail government, hail.
Yes. I mean, do you want to look like somebody who's out there overcharging people? I mean, and that's what it looks like if you've got money to burn. You know, and a lot of them are, you know, dual income, no kids and stuff like that. They do have money to burn. Well, that's great. Some of that lifestyle, live the best lifestyle. You live your best life, but some of that doesn't need to be.
Yeah.
You know, I think your branding needs to be focused. Your branding needs to be just on brand, professional, on brand, etc. You have friends on Instagram who are. It seems like they're always on vacation. They're always this and always that.
Yeah.
And they want you to envy their life. I mean, that's the whole thing nowadays, right?
I see a few people like that.
But it seems like they are more than they are.
Right.
Because you have thousands of followers. You follow whatever. I don't know how active. I'm sure you're pretty active, much more than I am on Instagram. I have a lot of Facebook friends because I'm old. But it seems like, but I have so many friends that everybody's always on vacation. Some, you know, at any time, if you go 1 week a year, I have 5,000 friends. 100 of my friends are going to be on, did I say that right? Yeah, 100 of my friends are going to be on vacation every week.
Yeah.
Right? And half of them are posting their pictures. I got 50
Lucky
friends
bastards.
on vacation, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm not seeing all their photos and stuff, but they're out there. That's if they only do 1 week a year. So it seems like everybody's always on vacation already. Now, if you're overdoing that with your glorious lifestyle, that doesn't impress most of the people you'd want to work with.
All right. Well, I appreciate you coming in.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
All right.
Appreciate it.
I just wanna